really working with suicide prevention starts with simply being aware of some of the signs and symptoms that might be going on with people. Usually suicide, most often, not always, but most often it's associated with someone who's been very depressed. Mm-hmm. Depression and suicide are very closely linked. But when you have someone you're noticing that their changes in their life have begun to occur, they've gotten more sad, they've gotten more despondent. Hopelessness is one of the biggest issues. If they start talking about things where they say, I'm just hopeless, I can't see any future, I don't know what I'm going to do, I can't see going past next week, there may be different ways that hopelessness is expressed, but that's one of the biggest factors that you'll see in somebody who might be suicidal. Thinking about things that people do that are even more explicit, though, somebody giving away possessions. Prized possessions, kind of like they're clearing out, they're liquidating everything. What's going on here? People who, where they're beginning to really isolate in a way that they've not been isolating before. You can see all these things kind of adding up, like something's going on in this person's life. And I would say you see someone who's gotten more depressed, they look more sad. If you talk to them, I just don't want to do anything, I'm lethargic, I don't know what, I can't get up in the morning, I can't, maybe they can't sleep. Mm-hmm. They may be, kind of in an anxious turmoil about things. And there's one in particular I think to watch out for. If somebody has been kind of sad and depressed and all of a sudden everything's fine. Yeah, I got over that. It's great, man. I'm doing fine. The problem with that is it could be a sign they've got a plan and everything set up. Because you see, there's something about suicide that's important to know. With many people, suicide is not a problem if one is suicidal. Suicide would be a release from the problem. Because what oftentimes people feel is a very deep sense of pain and suffering with what they're experiencing. And it is sometimes inexplicable, sometimes it has reasons. There can be a traumatic past, there could have been abuse, there could have been trauma that a person's experienced, any number of possible precursors. There could be bad relationships going on, all kinds of things could have preceded them being where they are. Right. But sometimes it's not even that specific. It's like just a general sense of malaise. Just everything's kind of gone to pot. Everything's gone down. And really working with that as a concerned person, not as a professional, not as someone who has to know and have all these degrees and licenses, but somebody right. who's just somebody who cares. It's important to notice that, this person who may be hurting may be at a point where they are making a plan to the point that they found release from all this. They know what they're going to do and maybe even when they're going to do it. So they're at a point where they're saying, I'm fine now because I'm going to find relief from this by taking my own life. So that's even something to watch out for.
Yeah.
But, looking for these signs, the important thing is if we see these things kind of adding up, I would do this even with somebody who's just depressed.
Right.
And I would ask the same questions. But if I think somebody is depressed, they're showing all the signs of it, and they're letting me know. Sometimes, again, let me back up just a second. It could be something that's not depressive. It could be something that's kind of like angry. Mm-hmm. It could be something like vengeful. I'm mad at those people for hurting me, and I'm going to get even. And here's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to kill myself. Mm-hmm. It could be some thought process like that. And here we have all of the stigma, all of the negatives about suicide. And this is where we have to be really careful because, there are things even in our language, the way we talk about suicide. We talk about committing suicide. Mm-hmm. What else is it that you commit? You commit You commit crimes and you commit sins. And so in the language of churches, even some official doctrine in some churches says suicide is a sin, a cardinal sin maybe. And in some legal backgrounds, at least in history, not so much now, there may still be some jurisdictions, I don't know. But what are you going to do to somebody to prosecute them after they've done it? But suicide was considered a crime against yourself, but it was a crime. So even in our language, so I avoid the term commit suicide and talk about died by suicide rather than committed suicide. So it's important to think about it this way in approaching people compassionately, not in a judgmental way, because our own insecurities about it lead us to say silly things, and not silly things, very stupid things to people.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be thinking about something like that, would you? See, that's not a compassionate approach. That's
not productive at all.
Not productive at all. But our own discomfort with it was, you're not going to tell me that you're suicidal, are you? As we stop up our ears, eyes, and everything else. I don't want to hear it. We're steering them to give us the answer we want to hear. No, we need to go in with the openness to say, they might tell me. But here's the clarity, Michael, I think that's so important. Nobody is going to talk people into being suicidal. So the important thing to do with somebody we think might be suicidal is to ask the question directly. Are you suicidal? Are you thinking about killing yourself? One of those two phrases. Not are you thinking about hurting yourself? Because that goes back to, no, I'm hurt now. This is going to give me freedom from my pain and the hurt that I'm feeling. So harm is it's a holdback. It's a way to think we're easing into it, but we're not. It's important to be direct and just ask the question directly. Are you thinking about killing yourself? Are you thinking about suicide? And in situations like that, if we have, again, you don't just go in and start with that, but what's going on? Tell me what's been happening with you lately. I've noticed how you feel just so much sadder than I've ever seen you before. Anything we've noticed, that's different, that's odd about that person's behavior that's different from what it's been before, or even if we've never met them before and we've found some connection with them, here's a person who's really having some struggles, to go in and ask what's happening. Tell me about yourself. Tell me what's going on. I want to listen. I want to care, and let them talk. Don't be judgmental in any way, whatever they might say. But somewhere in all of that, especially if things feel like, wow, this is a depressed situation, to ask that question specifically.
Gotta be side by side.